Hi, everybody. Okay, so I had a really good question, and it was just simply, what is medical coding? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. So, medical coding is where we're taking any type of diagnosis or procedure, we're just going to add codes to it, and that is medical coding. So, that's the basics. Now, your ICD-10-CM and your ICD-10-PCS are the two books that I give to my basic class, but my advanced class gets four books. They're going to get my ICD-10-CM, my ICD-10-PCS, the CPT, and the HCPCS. Now, the ICD-10-CM, this is for diagnoses only. No matter what facility that you're at, no matter who you are, if you want a diagnosis code, you're going to go to the ICD-10-CM. So your diagnosis is going to explain why a patient needed to be seen by a provider. So why were they seen? Why did they have an issue? That is the diagnosis. So the ICD-10 PCS and the CPT, these are going to be for procedures. Your procedures are just telling you what all happened during that encounter. So, okay, they had to be seen because they had a broken arm. Broken arm would be the diagnosis. And the procedure would be everything that took place while they were in that encounter with a provider. So, was it just an office visit? Or was it the cast? Was it an x-ray? All of those things, not just one, but all of those things have to have a procedure code to go with it to tell, okay, let's use insurance, for instance. If we're billing it off to the insurance, they're going to say, okay, they had a broken arm, so we did all of this while they were here. So those two things should match. That's called code linkage. And it also shows medical necessity, which is the next reason why we have medical coding. So it's going to show medical necessity, reasons why our patients were seen, and what all happened while we were there. So medical necessity is whenever those two things, our diagnosis and our procedures match, and it shows, hey, we're not doing any unnecessary tests, or we're going through the correct procedures for the insurance company. Everything has to match. Code linkage shows medical necessity. Now, another reason that we use medical coding is for statistical purposes. So right now we're in the middle of COVID. It is an actual pandemic. So a pandemic is whenever we're affected worldwide, not just nationwide. So with a pandemic, it's especially important that they keep track of those things. Well, they're not going to read billions of medical records. They're actually just pulling reports that's generated from codes that were input into the system, or medical medical software, and they're going to say, hey, we've had this many cases of COVID-19, or this many patients were seen for COVID-19, this many patients actually had COVID-19, and this all the tests that we did. And then after they have the testing, they're going to say, okay, how did y'all treat those patients? So the procedures are going to tell all of that, regardless of whether it's from the CPT, the ICD-10 PCS, or the HCPCS. So the last reason, so the most, it's very common, but people don't realize, and it's not talked about as much, but another major reason why we use medical codes are to know where to reallocate funding. So here I have resource allocations. So it's not necessarily just for funding. It could be like, do we really need another building? Do we need another hospital in this area? I mean, what is going on that we know where to reallocate funding? Okay, so what kind of educational materials do we need for our community? What type of new building might we want to have? I know, like Christus, let's use them for instance. I used to work for Christus, so whenever, before they build a new building, maybe, I'm just saying maybe, I don't know 100% because I have not been part of that, but they can actually pull reports and say, okay, these are how many patients that we have with cancer, or this is how many patients that we have with diabetes. This is how many patients that we've had with COVID. So they can use those reports that's generated from our medical codes. Now, I will say, I do know that Medicare actually looks at codes, so they know where to allocate certain education for providers. So they'll say, okay, we've had this many cases where people have used this particular modifier, and I think y'all are overusing that modifier because there's no way that all of these patients could have that problem. So that's also another way to say, okay, what else is going on in the community, and where do we need to reallocate funding, building, education, not just to the patients, but to the providers as well. I mean, there's so many different scenarios where they can actually pull and generate reports based off of medical codes. So that is the reason why we use medical coding, and it's really not hard. It's just a new way to learn how to use the books. That's all it really is. The books are very large, so it's kind of overwhelming whenever you first grab them, and it shouldn't scare you, because the one thing that I want people to leave here with, I've noticed this semester has been worse than all the rest, where everybody thinks my coding books are textbooks. These are not textbooks. These are coding books. So for instance, if I would give you a problem out of your textbook and say, hey, I want you to go get your dictionary and look up all of these key terms. Well, you're going to get a dictionary. You're not going to get another textbook. You're going to get a dictionary, which is a resource material to find the information that you need. So the same thing goes with a coding book. You're going to use your coding books to answer questions or pull out, find the answers that you need from medical records. So, well, for the class purposes, you're going to use your textbook that gives you those scenarios, and then you'll have your coding books where you're going to find the answers. Think of them like big dictionary type resource materials. Now, if you look at your ICD-10-CM, because this is your diagnosis, in the beginning of the book, you're going to have your alphabetic index. It looks a lot like a dictionary. Everything's in alphabetical order. So just keep that in mind. Your alphabetical index is in the front and your tabular is in the back. And I'll go into more detail about that later. But just so you know, it's a coding book. It's not a textbook. It's a resource material. Okay, so if you have any questions, as always, email me. I'm here to help. And if you give me specific questions, I know what type of videos or what type of information that y'all need as a class. All right, so I'll talk to you soon. Bye.